Oh, yeah. So I guess we should probably introduce Kelsey.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm pretty active on the Wheel of Time subreddit. Yep.
Who are you on Instagram?
KM326. I hate the idea that like there's a prophecy that destines you for the bad side. And because the whole series is about choice and choosing to be good.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
So we're starting chapter 47, More Tales of the Wheel, and our symbol is the ravens. I have the first paragraph as usual.
What do you think the ravens are?
Could it be, who are the dark friends in this scene? Just Ingtar?
Ingtar, and of course Fain. Just curious if just the symbolism of it, because usually the heading refers to something in the chapter, and the ravens so far have been mostly dark friends, or occasionally I think it represents the Shan-Chan.
Yeah. Someone have an idea?
I guess sort of the tale of the fall of Malkier could be the
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
And then Fain's story as well,
right.
as most of this chapter.
So it's basically about the dark victories of the dark. Yeah, so okay, that makes sense.
We finished up last chapter with Moiraine going to question Fain. And we're opening chapter 47 with the boys kind of waiting around. And I have the first paragraph. In itchy restlessness had ran pacing beside the dining table. 12 strides. The table was exactly 12 strides long, no matter how many times he stepped it off. Irritably, he made himself stop keeping tally. Perrin's sitting at a table, equally kind of brooding, and in the same way Matt is slouching in a chair here. And I thought it was interesting that it notes that Loyal is studying the walls.
Yeah.
Literally.
Well, this I think is related to the comment Agelmar made about a single well-placed line.
Yeah.
I think Loyal is really sort of taken in that lesson and is really like absorbing the idea of this one well-placed line. So he puts his sort of hand down on that spot. Here's the line. Sometimes he closed his eyes as if the feeling was more important than seeing. And that's that feeling the beauty of a single line.
I thought that was interesting. That's like all we see of Loyal in this
I'm
chapter.
just amused by this imagery. It says he was almost pressing his broad nose against the stone while gently tracing the joints. And so I imagine everyone's like walking around and then Loyal's just in a corner with his nose like in the stone. Classic Loyal.
Staring at the wall.
Well, and he's spent so much time complaining about, no groves and all of the architecture the Ogier built was destroyed. And he really sort of saw the whole town as pretty ugly. And then Agelmar sort of changed his perspective. And it's like mind blown moment for Loyal. Just like, whoa.
I like that you have a little interpretation for that because I didn't really understand what was going on. I sort of glossed over it.
It's totally Ogier mind being blown. Just being like, oh, maybe the curves and organic beauty can be balanced with a more geometric beauty. He's really discovering geometric beauty for the first time.
I dig that.
He's just a young guy. He hasn't seen the world yet.
Oh, he will. He will.
Right? He's only, how old is Loyal? 7? Is he in
90.
his 70s? 90s?
Yeah. Yeah. He's as old as old Senbui, nearly a century old.
Senbui.
There's a little bit of like Matt touching the dagger through his cloak, just sort of like really, reminding us that he's connected to that.
Yeah.
Don't have more than that.
So he's grinning about something. I don't know. I think I just like everything Matt does because he's my favorite character.
I do like this part, though, because Nynaeve and Egwene are talking to Lord Agelmar, and there's a line where it says, once even Nynaeve threw back her head and roared with laughter. I have to assume, since the topic of conversation right after that is land, that basically Lord Agelmar is telling a funny story about Lan.
I would like to think so.
Ooh, nice. I love imagining, like, Jordan does this a lot where characters will have a conversation and you just have to, like,
Absolutely.
make up what they're talking about based on little stuff he gives you.
The line right after that is him talking about starting the story about Malkier. Right before that, he has to be talking about Lan. And then, just that line that Nynaeve threw her head back and laughed makes me think, she's craving information about Lan. And Agelmar told her a funny story about him. And she totally thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, the next line I think that gives us any indication of what they're talking about is when Egwene says, "My lord," Egwene was saying, I'm skipping a couple of lines here, but I thought he was a warder, but you call him Daishan, and talk about a golden crane banner, as did those other men. Sometimes you sound almost as if he's a king. I remember once Moiraine called him the last lord of the Seven Towers. Who is he? So they were almost definitely talking about him.
So before we switch to Lan, because I feel we're going to spend a ton of time on him, this is from Rand's perspective, so I like this little line where Egwene says "my lord," and then Rand thinks as glibly as if she had been using titles all of her life. And I think that's like perfect because Egwene comes in, she just molds herself to wherever she's in, Aiel camps, Faldara, whatever. And Rand and Matt and Perrin just, well, Matt later, but they're Taviran. They make things follow them. So they don't
stick
really
out like
do
a sore
this.
thumb.
Yeah. But Rand is like, Egwene using titles, like she's done it her whole life.
Yeah, I know. I see what you mean. I kind of skipped over that because I saw it as like the typical Rand Egwene back and forth, but I like that observation there.
It is very Rand Egwene. Like they've got the competitive streak between them.
Totally.
And Rand, Matt, and Perrin really are kind of themselves through the whole. I see what you mean.
I like that idea of a competitive streak between the two of them. The two of them definitely have a bit of one-upsmanship going on. And when Rand sees Egwene like be all smooth and say like, "My lord,"
What?
he's like a little jealous.
And Jordan, like, he likes to use competition as flirting a little bit because Nynaeve does it too.
Oh yeah.
Well, and I mean Matt and Tuon, their whole relationship is competition.
Exactly. He uses that a lot.
And we see at the end of this chapter, this is maybe is it the end of the next chapter where Nynaeve and Lan have a page-long conversation?
I think that's the Blight.
In the Blight, yeah.
Oh yeah. At the end of the next chapter. But that's kind of the first time where we see them like non-competitively getting along.
Right. As opposed to just admiring each other's skills or
Yeah.
Blushing behind.
Exactly. Exactly.
Staring intently. Like Lan staring intently. That's like confessing love, basically.
Yeah, right.
Right. The corner of his mouth twitched. Why are you laughing so hard? He's like the Aiel in that way. There's a great line later on though where I think it's Elaine is wondering why she ever thought Aiel, or maybe even Egwene, thinking why she wonders why Aiel are not very
Yeah, she thinks that about Avienda. Like she sees in her face how upset she is, or she was laughing at something.
right. And she's like, how did I ever think Aiel weren't expressive? They're totally expressive. It's just subtler and different.
Different. Yeah, I think that's a good way to explain it. When we spent like a day looking for quotes about, this was a couple weeks ago, someone asked us for quotes about Aiel and pain and the like embracing the pain.
Right. I guess his wife was about to give birth and he wanted quotes for to help her through because they were going to try and do it with no drugs. And he wanted to be able to read her Aiel quotes about embracing pain.
I hope that works out well for him.
I haven't heard from him since.
I hope it works out well for her.
Yeah. I hope it works out for her.
But that is great, though. I think in Egwene's chapters in the Tower, she reflects on that a lot.
Yeah, and most of what I found was stuff from Knife of Dreams when she's getting beaten every day.
Right. We really actually, it was funny that we found almost no quotes directly from the Aiel. It was all quotes from our main
Agreeing about
characters.
the Aiel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about what the Aiel told them.
A little bit of stuff from Rand.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few scenes where there's Aiel being tortured. And we see that they're not, I can't remember if it was an article I read or something I kind of put together, but we can see that the Aiel aren't like, it's not like they're immune to pain. They just handle it in a different way. There's this philosophy, like, rather than fighting it, yeah, you embrace it. And it's not that it doesn't hurt. It's not that they don't feel it or they're somehow inhuman. It's just that they are okay with being in this state.
I feel like some of that comes with also being willing to wake from the dream. And so in some ways, being tortured is, Aiel are not afraid of dying. And I think a lot of what makes torture horrific is that you are afraid of death. Pain, yes, but also death. And so by taking away at least one of those, you can embrace the pain and not fear the death.
Well,
Torture
pain
is less effective.
is your body
Yeah.
telling you that something's wrong. And so if you know you're okay,
Right.
well, you might not be, but if you're getting beaten, and in Egwene's circumstance, like, she knows she's not going to die. And even though it hurts really bad, she just has to get through it. And for her, it's, a part of her war. And so she's okay. So she's like, this is good. And so she's not upset that it's hurting her because it's something that she has to do. So she's, yeah.
And she gets better and better at it as those chapters go by.
Right.
It's a sacrifice she makes.
Yeah.
Right. She switches her mindset, but there is, real physiology that happens when you can put mind over matter.
I think the Buddhist monks are the sort of prototypical example of being able to deal with extreme cold or extreme heat or, some sort of pain. And I think they put them through MRI scans and see differences in the brain.
Yeah.
And they don't respond like someone who's in pain. It's a cool thing.
And meditation is a big thing through the Wheel of Time, not just
Absolutely.
for embracing the source, but also for, we see it like soldiers use it, the types of meditation.
Just for fighting. Also, obviously, female and male channelers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, meditation's super helpful, I think, for everybody in the
The
series.
hot, cold thing, the world of
That's right.
dreams thing.
The hot, cold thing, I'd love to talk about that a little bit more at some point.
That's when you were talking about the Buddhist monk thing.
Yeah, whether it's a funny thing because we have channelers insisting it has nothing to do with channeling, but we only ever see channelers do it.
Can't the wise ones all do it? Even the ones that can't channel?
I think all the Aiel, well, a lot of wise ones can channel, but I think all the Aiel are so used to living in extreme climates that they're pretty
enough.
much acclimated to anything.
Yeah, so they don't have any need to meditate to be used to extreme heat. And I don't really think they bothered by extreme cold. I don't know what they're... Because, yeah, in the desert gets really cold at night.
Yeah. That's a real thing. Strange phenomena.
Yeah, it has to do with heat retention.
Yeah, in dry places.
Yeah.
When the sun rises and there's no like insulation, so it's immediately brutal hot, and then the sun sets and it's freezing cold. I've experienced this
We experienced it during the eclipse.
in Southern California and Nevada. I can think of times when I woke up and there was a layer of ice on my sleeping bag, having just slept out, and then the sun rises and it's like brutal hot, and everything just evaporates immediately. It's a bizarre hellland.
Okay, so I know that Aiel have water seekers. I'm not convinced like they could have actually survived in that climate for however 3,000 years. Or 1,000, how long they've been in the waste.
Do you mean without channeling?
Oh yeah, I guess they do have channelers. But like all the Aiel are amazed at like a puddle of water. And I'm like, but you have thousands of people. Like, how do you get water at all?
I'm trying to think of a comparable society on Earth somewhere. I mean, they have permanent settlements for sure.
Do they have wells?
I can't say for sure. They've got to have something. I'm thinking of a quote. I can't remember exactly where it's from, where somebody mentions that the Aiel fight wars over bodies of water that you can jump over, like a stream that's you could
Yeah.
just step over.
And they don't waste anything. Like, they
Right.
don't wash with water. They don't waste water on anything but drinking, essentially. And they have water seekers and channelers. But I guess what confuses me is when characters are amazed by super small bodies of water. And I'm like, well, you had to have seen something similar to this, or else how would you?
Be able to survive. Yeah. I mean, whenever I think about the Aiel, I think about the Fremen from the Dune series. Have you ever read Dune? Oh, well, it's a very similar kind of. These people live in this super arid landscape, and they have machines that collect the dew in the morning and collect water out of the air, essentially. And they have just enough so that somebody with a few liters of extra water is considered very wealthy. That's sort of the way I imagine the Aiel landscape, except more like Southern California than the deserts in Dune. How do the Aiel support so many thousands of people with such a small amount of water?
Exactly.
You seem upset about that.
It is definitely one of the things that bothers me. Part of it is the Aiel waste is gigantic. It is much, much larger.
That's kind of what I was thinking, is that people are spread out enough.
They're very spread out. There are a few places like Cold Rock's Hold that do have a steady underground spring to support more life than you would otherwise expect. And, they're capable of growing cotton. They're capable of growing corn, right? There's certain crops that they're able to grow through irrigation. It's not sandy, dunes, the entire waste.
That's kind of what I was just saying, is I imagine it more like Southern California than
it's scrub brushy.
Sand hills in the Sahara Desert somewhere.
Right, because they do have foliage that gets described, like small branches, bushes.
There's water out there and creatures that live too, all sorts of animals. I imagine it's so very little that you just wouldn't dare waste any.
Right. And if you're not familiar, you're gonna die. And it's so hot, you're gonna die pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can relate to in the southern section of the PCT. I didn't I usually bathe even when I'm living in the wilderness, at least a little. There you just wouldn't want your partners to see you use any extra water that you filtered to wash yourself. It's just a disgrace. There's so little of it. It's so hard to collect.
I made a note of Rand gives himself a little wash in the Blight with the little amount of water Lan allowed for such things, which is classic Lan.
Very much. Well, and there's one point where he's like, well, now I realize why Lan insisted we bring so much water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Once they get deep into the Blight.
Yeah, and it takes more than you think. Even if you're not sweating, you still need at least 4 liters a day.
To drink?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you want to cook any food.
Well, and you have to carry all that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what always blows my mind, is just how heavy water is.
Yeah. 2 pounds a liter.
4 liters a day. 8 pounds a day. If you're not drinking that much water, you just lose 8 pounds a day. That's incredible. That's why in 3 days you've lost 24 pounds of water.
You need that much to live.
Right. I know we don't live in water, but we certainly, we contain a sea inside of us.
Yeah. But, because I drink so much that isn't water. I start every day with an enormous amount of iced coffee, which is basically, it's just water. That's it's flavored water.
You get a lot of water from fruits and vegetables too. Well, I shouldn't say a lot, but you get some.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get a fair amount. One of the reasons why when you're traveling you have to carry so much water is you have a lot of dried food that doesn't have water in it.
Totally.
And sweat.
And you're sweating, yeah.
You have to make all that up.
So back to the book. Back to the chapter. We had Agelmar telling a story about Lan, and this is where we get, all of Lan's backstory, most of Lan's backstory.
I think this is the most comprehensive story we ever see. We definitely see hints and stuff later, but this is like a 4 or 5 page story about Lan.
And I just want to sort of break down the family we're talking about here, because that's really what it is.
Yeah.
You have Lan's parents, his father, how would you say it? Alakir, and his wife, Elena.
Eliana. Well,
Eliana or something like that.
Eliana, yeah. Eliana. And his brother, Lane.
Akir's brother, Lane. And Lane's wife, Brienne. And then Brienne sort of hooks up with this other guy, Cawin.
Yeah.
Who's a dark friend, who was almost king, but not quite. And I would assume he ends up turning to the dark side after he fails to become king.
Quick question for you guys.
Yeah.
Sure.
So Agelmar gives a little bit about Lan and Malkir, and Nynaeve says Lan is from Malkir, and it says she seemed troubled. So to me, that seems like she's heard the story. And I'm wondering, I guess a lot of people have heard the story.
I think she's troubled because he's a king.
Fair enough.
That's really the whole, she's like, oh my God, this guy I have a crush on and who's I've been flirting with and who's kind of been flirting with me is a king? Wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
And Rand goes through this sort of the same thing when he learns that Elaine is a queen. He's like, I'm just a commoner. I'm just a nobody from Two Rivers. Why would a king or a queen fall for me?
Before Nynaeve says that, Agelmar gives a pretty thorough breakdown where he says, Lord of the Seven Towers, an ancient title, not even the High Lords of Tyr have older, though the Queen of Andor comes close. He will not speak of it yet. The story is well known along the border. He is a king, or should have been. And I think also she may be sad for him because now she understands his life.
Yeah, I don't think you can hear that story without being sad for Lan.
It puts everything into context.
It really does. He's had his whole life, his whole family, his whole land stripped away from him. He's fighting a lost battle.
And then if you think about his childhood, like he was raised by these soldiers, Malkiri soldiers, that ingrained in him the way of the sword and duty, and that's rough. Like, Lan didn't have a childhood at all.
No, not at all.
At some point, Agelmar says he played with weapons as children play with toys.
Yeah.
He's that good. So this brings me back to really early on in the book. In this section, he says these warriors taught him everything he knows about the Blight. But Elias says Lan says Elias taught him about the Blight.
Yeah.
And that was always one of those inconsistencies that I was never able to reconcile.
Well, I think we can kind of. I feel like I've always sort of overlooked that because Lan had all this training and then he went to go
to the White Tower as a warder. Well, he ran into
he runs into Moiraine and is bonded.
Yeah.
So he doesn't go through typical warder training.
No.
Do you think they end up back at the tower and he goes? He certainly trains with Elias in the tower.
Who is Elias's Aes Sedai? Do you remember?
We looked it up. It was she's in a bunch of scenes, but she's not that important.
I'm just wondering if she worked with Moiraine at some point, like in the 20 years between New Spring and Eye of the World. They were out there doing stuff.
Not that I know of.
The only thing I can think is that because the warders gain +1 advantage or whatever from the bond. That gives them an edge in the Blight that even if you're a badass Valkyrie soldier, you're not going to have. So it's possible that Elias taught him about being a warder and what that means and what you can do in the Blight.
And Elias is more than a regular man. He doesn't have like just +1 advantage. He also has like +1 intuition.
Right. And he can sense way more.
Yeah, well, I mean, he probably wasn't bonded to the wolves when he was teaching Lan.
We don't know when that happens, though.
Yeah.
But I assume he was driven out relatively quickly after it happens because his eyes would have turned yellow. The Aes Sedai would have investigated. They would have wanted to gentle him, and that's when he would have fled and had to kill a couple of warders.
That makes sense.
So, being as how quickly it happens with Perrin over a couple of days, he goes from not having yellow eyes to having yellow eyes. I would assume it's similar with Elias. I guess it could have been more gradual, but
it's such a great conversation that Perrin and Elias have, where Elias was like, "Well, they wanted to gentle me, so I had to leave." And Perrin was like, "Well, what would happen if they gentled you?" And he was like, "Probably nothing.
It just pissed me off.
I just didn't like the idea."
He's like, "I'm not sticking around."
But so I imagine that was a pretty quick process. And so that he wasn't necessarily bonded to the wolves when he was a warder in the White Tower.
Yeah, you're probably right on that. And I think your Aes Sedai would know if something like that were happening to you right away.
Right.
Ooh, I wonder what they would sense. Like, what would change?
Well, they're mostly sensing emotions, right?
Yeah, it's a little difficult to interpret.
Physical sensations, too.
I have, like, nothing, but I just think it'd be really interesting.
Yeah, no, I do, too.
Yeah, there's not that much to go off of. And later we see the weird bonds where, like, what's his name?
Androl?
Yeah, Androl.
Pavera.
And, yeah, Pavara have the bond each other and have a different sort of bond.
I mean, two channelers bonding each other versus... and I assume when they're far away, we know the bonds are less effective.
That's different. And when we get to see in the heads of bonded people, mostly, I feel like there are special cases, like Elaine and Birgitta, Pavara and Androl. But those are different sorts of bonds. Those aren't the typical female to male.
Right. Even Rand and Alana is not typical because Rand is a channeler.
Yeah.
And so she can't control him with it. But we definitely see that like distance reduces the contact.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how much they would know, you know. Sometimes it seems like Moiraine knows what Lan's thoughts are, but but I could just as easily speculate that Moiraine knows what Lan's thoughts are because he told her.
Or they spend 20 years together and it's kind of easy to know what the other person's thinking when you spent 20 years together.
And then you get double, you get their feelings.
You got their feelings plus the experience.
Or he's just super into Nynaeve and it's like obvious enough that whenever she walks into the room, he notices,
I mean...
I can't even imagine from Maureen's perspective. She's probably just like, oh.
I mean...
She's like, I discovered the Dragon Reborn. I'm fulfilling my life's purpose and you're falling in love with this.
My warder's like Gun Moon-eyed.
Gun Moon-eyed. He does a bit.
His eyebrows twitching all over.
I mean, I figure typical Aes Sedai would have to deal with that. Like if you're bonding anyone that, has any kind of a sex drive and you're not sleeping with them, or even if you are, you're still going to have to deal with like every time they're feel attracted to someone, you're going to know.
I mean, we definitely see the handkerchief trick.
What's that?
The handkerchief trick?
What's that?
They like seal it off.
That Min isn't able to do it, but Avienda is. That basically when someone is having sex, you're able to sort of, just in your head, pretend like it's being wrapped up in a handkerchief and put it away. So you don't have to hear it.
Well, she's a channeler.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it seems to be something channelers
You have to be a channeler to do it. But in book 2, Moiraine thinks about that. She thinks, oh, well, I mean, over the years, Lan has, shared his bed with pretty women on their adventures, but she was never jealous. And it's like clear she's kind of, I wouldn't say, I mean, probably a little bit of jealousy, understandably. Like, Moiraine has her mission, and her, number one partner in crime has, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like, compromised motivations now.
Yeah. I see them as having, certainly not a physical relationship, but a very intimate emotional relationship.
Yeah. I mean, you can't spend that much time with
Yeah.
someone and not have a pretty high level of intimacy.
And that's where him
And when you have to carry that secret.
and him sleeping with other women, for her, probably it doesn't affect their emotional relationship in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And since they don't
Right,
have a physical
exactly.
relationship, it's no big deal. But as soon as he starts to care for Nynaeve, that alters the emotional relationship he's having with Moiraine. And that's why she starts to feel a little jealous.
And she thinks about how he is sharing her affections for the Emmonsfielders.
Totally. Well, and that's as much about Rand as it is about Nynaeve.
True. But it's all part of the changing dynamic that's out of her control.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think if anything, she probably hates not being in control as much as the rest of it.
The wheel weaves,
Yeah.
as the wheel wills.
Yeah, you can
Honestly,
say that.
I think she handles it well.
What, by suiciding?
Yeah, well, more or less. Well, I was gonna say, I always speculated that Lan takes he does develop a warmth for the Emmonsfielders, but his personal war is against the Shadow, and if he's right there next to the Dragon Reborn, like she's gonna do what he can. That's part of the war.
Yeah.
But I think, Moiraine is saying, in order to support the Dragon Reborn, you should support me getting the Dragon Reborn to do what I want him to do. Whereas
Yeah.
Lan's directly supporting Rand.
Right.
And Moraine's sort of like, that's kind of undercutting what I want.
Is Lan sort of the first Dragonsworn? Or maybe Moiraine is.
Oh, man.
Nynaeve all the way.
Change that kid's diapers.
No one's touching him.
Yeah.
with her nearby.
That's true. She's been devoted to him her entire life, and she definitely continues to protect him.
Yeah. You know what I was thinking about the other day that I'd totally forgotten about? When Tam and Matt's father...
Allsbet. No, that's Luhan.
No, that's his.
Shit. I can't think of his name.
Abel.
When Tam and Abel go, like, the boys disappear, the boys and Egwene disappear, like, a day or two later, Nynaeve disappears, and Tam and Abel wait like a week, and they just go all the way to Tarvalon, straight to the White Tower, and they're like, hey, where's our kids? That whole thing happens.
Well, and that's going on pretty much right now.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's in the beginning of the Great Hunt, where the Amerlin's basically like, yeah, your dad was here.
Is it Suan that tells that story at some point?
I thought it was.
When, Tam shows up and she said they gave her like a really hard time.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. That is when Matt gets healed in the White Tower. That is not in the Great Hunt in the beginning.
Okay, I can't remember exactly what.
Because he wakes up, and remember,
when the story
Lanfear is like,
happens.
ask them if your father showed up. They won't tell you the whole story unless you ask.
Oh.
Yeah, that's
I mean, El Scrinwall. But I think it's still Suan telling them that story.
Yeah.
We have not talked about this story, Lan's story at all.
I
gave
a
who
bit.
the characters are.
I think
So
there's some
it's-
usable
it's
stuff
so
in there.
good
Yeah.
though. I'm scared to touch it.
I know. It's just this incredible, in some ways, normally when I take notes, I like maybe copy out a sentence and write up a little, a couple of words about it, just to remind me what I want to say. I copied this entire freaking speech. It is so good. It is so epic, and it tells the story so well.
I have a lot of highlights.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I don't want to say much about it other than, no, I don't want to say much about it. I want you to read it. And then I want to talk about it a little bit later. But like, it's, read it speaks for itself on so many levels, because
Okay.
I almost want Tom to do it in high chant.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, we touched on a lot, but so at the time, Lan is an infant in a cradle who probably can't even walk yet. The first highlight I read. The second one is that, and the beginning perhaps was Lane, who was Lan's father's brother, so Lan's uncle.
Lan's uncle.
On a dare, Lane Mandragoran, the king's brother, led his lances through the blight to the blasted lands, perhaps the Shale Ghoul itself. Lane's wife, Brienne, made that dare for the envy that burned her heart, that Alakir had been raised to the throne instead of Lane. The king and Lane were as close as brothers could be, as close as twins even, after the royal Al was added to Akir's name, but jealousy racked Brienne. Skipping over a little, Lane died in the blasted lands with most of those who followed him, men Malkier could ill afford to lose, and Brienne blamed the king, saying that Shale Ghoul itself would have fallen if Alakir had led the rest of the Malkieri north with her husband. For revenge, she plotted with Cowan Gamalin, called Cowan Fairheart, to seize the throne for her son, Isam.
There's Isam.
There's
Yeah.
Isam, yeah. So this is Isam is Lan's cousin.
That's right, first cousin.
And he ends up hooking up with Luke, Lord Luke.
I've
Who
never
is
understood that.
Rand's
Uncle.
uncle.
Uncle. It's Tigraine's
Yes.
brother.
Now, after Malkier falls, shortly after this, Isam and Lan are rushed away. Isam, it's said, or Agelmar thinks, was overtaken by Trollocs. Lan's party barely escapes.
Isam is raised in that dark village.
The town.
Yeah, we find this out later.
Yeah, but he's basically grows up in the blight in that town with all the corrupted Aiel
And
and
Myrdral.
And so he grows up learning to kill. Meanwhile, Lord Luke is sent off to the waste with by a prophecy. The same one that sends Tigraine into the waste.
Yes.
And he goes to Shale Ghoul to seek the Dark One because he wants to channel.
Right.
And so the two of them end up both committing to the Dark One, looking for a way to become more powerful. And the Dark One fuses their soul together into a single entity. And that entity is Slayer.
Which is why later Slayer often appears in the real world as one face and in Teleran Riyadh as another face. Although I read not as a rule.
No,
You
he
can change it around.
generally appears as Lord Luke in the world and generally as Isam in the world of dreams. But that's not something he has to do. That's just a preference. Oftentimes when he's murdering people, Isam likes to come out. I think, isn't it? Isam especially likes to kill wolves.
Yeah. He's given the name Slayer by the wolves.
Are y'all of the philosophy that Luke was a dark friend independently of the prophecy? Or was he sent there and then turned to the dark?
I don't know if I have anything to say, yay or nay.
I've thought about it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have any evidence, yay or nay. I certainly have the opinion that he was a Dark One. And upon being sent to the Blight, he sought out, because he wants the ability to channel. That's that sort of, what does the Dark One seek out in his followers? Selfishness and the desire for power. And Lord Luke has that. Whether he had pledged himself to the dark before or after, who knows? I don't think we have any evidence. Do we know how old he was when he was sent off?
Luke?
Yeah.
No, but we can assume probably 30s.
Do you think that old? I thought he was much younger.
Younger? Maybe.
Well, he's Tigraine's brother.
Yeah.
So assume within a few years, 17,
He's 17?
when he was sent off to the Blight.
Jesus. In my mind, that's like a kid. That's a child.
Totally. So, I mean, that's young enough to certainly not have sought the dark already, and maybe he was, you know, turned to it to survive in the blight.
I hate the idea that like there's a prophecy that destines you for the bad side, and because the whole series is about choice,
Right,
and choosing to be good. So I'm of the philosophy that he was already Dark Friend, and in order to complete the pattern, there was a prophecy that he was to be sent to the blight.
I like that, and it would make sense because otherwise, wouldn't he have, certainly come into a position of power as the queen's son?
Yeah.
He would have been,
Yeah, he would.
yeah,
Yeah.
Was the first sword.
with the possibility of becoming king, not through law, but through the same way that Gabriel tries to become king.
Right.
Is basically through deception and
Through
working behind.
puppeting
Anyway,
the queen.
yeah.
So that's Slayer.
So that's Slayer. And that's Isom.
But moving on, the next great highlight, or what I thought was a great highlight, is from Agelmar's monologue here, is Elakir and his queen, Eliana, had Lan brought to them in his cradle. Into his infant hands they placed the sword of Malkieri kings, the sword he wears today, a weapon made by Aes Sedai during the War of Power, the War of the Shadow that brought down the Age of Legends. They anointed his head with oil, naming him Daishan, a diademed battle lord, and consecrated him as the next king of the Malkieri. And in his name they swore the ancient oath of Malkieri kings and queens. Agelmar's face hardened, and he recites it. To stand against the shadow so long as iron is hard and stone abides, to defend the Malkieri while one drop of blood remains, to avenge what cannot be defended. The words rang in the chamber. And I liked that, especially that last bit there, because at the end of this series, iron is no longer hard.
Oh, yeah.
And stone does not necessarily abide. It's the end.
Like that.
Yeah.
It also reminds me a lot of the Aiel into Sightblinder's.
It's very reminiscent, isn't
spit
it?
in the Sightblinder's eye, yeah. I mean, just that similar, like...
With the last breath, and this is with the last drop of blood.
Right, exactly.
On the last day.
I didn't come here to win.
I came here to kill you.
I came here to kill
Most badass line of the whole series. I still seriously think about it like all the time.
Oh man,
yeah.
I had a tweet that I was really proud of. So Sanderson was, he's promoting Oathbringer right now, and he had a copy to give away, and he's like, go ahead and comment, and I'll give the book to someone randomly. And my response was, I didn't come here to win. I came here to read you. I like
to
that.
avenge what cannot be defended. That is like Lan's entire character arc.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely. Another character who was introduced here that we've heard of before, Jane Farstrider. Jane Farstrider is the one, he's a young kid, and he rises up and exposes Colwyn as a dark friend.
Is Jane a Malkieri?
Yeah, remember he says...
That's right.
If you ever meet a Malkieri, tell him Jane Farstrider died clean. And I guess it's because he had to have played a role in this, because was he already being manipulated?
No, I don't think that happens till way later.
I think that's
okay.
after, because he ends up, I think he leaves Malkier and he ends up in Shara. And then, this is 50 years
through
ago.
the Aiel Waste.
Yeah.
So he spends 20
right.
years traveling.
Yeah.
He comes back, and then 20 years ago, he was given to the Ogier and gives the message about the Eye of the World. And then he turns up, 20 years later in this series as a broken old man.
Yeah.
But I assume the travels of Jane Farstrider is written in the 20 years starting sort of after
this happens.
After the fall of Malkier. Okay.
He goes off and goes on his adventures. They write a book about him.
I would
it
read
becomes a famous
that.
book. The Travels of Jane Farstrider would be the best book ever. Sanderson, come on.
Just do it, man.
Just write it.
Just do it.
Please. Anything.
That was something I had never caught before, because this story, as much as I love it, it's very easy to jump over it in the rereads. You're like, oh yeah, that's Lan's story, and then not read it in a lot of detail. But there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here.
Yeah.
And Jane is mentioned just in passing, but this is his origin.
Agelmar also mentions, and I had forgotten this or not noticed it before, that Eliana and Alakir send Lan south with their 20 finest soldiers, essentially. And he sums up the end of the story saying, only 5 of the bodyguards reached Fel Moran alive, every man wounded, but they had the child unharmed. From the cradle, they taught him all they knew. He learned weapons as other children learned toys, and the blight as other children their mother's garden. The oath sworn over his cradle is graven in his mind. There is nothing left to defend, but he can avenge. He denies his titles, yet in the borderlands he is called the Uncrowned, and if ever he raised the golden crane of Malkier, an army would come to follow, but he will not lead men to their deaths. In the blight, he courts death as a suitor courts a maiden, but he will not lead others to it. I also have the next paragraph where he says essentially that if you have to enter the blight and the party has to be small, like, don't bring these farm boys. Like, I'll give you good soldiers who have a pure heart. He's like, I promise.
Yeah, but you don't need any of them because you got Lan. Is basically what he says. Is like, but none of them are as good as Lan.
And Agelmar he doesn't understand what's going on, and he keeps objecting very courteously to Moiraine's seemingly crazy idea to him that somehow these 3 farm boys are going to somehow fight the Dark One for her. And later he says, I have a little before that, but later Agelmar says something like,
I think it's after Fain's story.
Yeah.
But he sort of has a shocked moment where he's like, wait, are these boys going to channel?
Yeah, he was like, are they channelers? Is that why they're useful?
And she just dodges the fuck out of that question.
She says they're Ta'veren,
right.
Which is not an answer.
That's not no.
That's not a no.
Yeah.
So
it's not a yes either.
This is like stupidly obvious, but I just realized it. This is when Nynaeve learns about the Golden Crane and that if it's ever raised, an army would come follow.
Yeah.
Damn.
Will my husband ride alone?
Yeah. 14 books from now, I definitely cried a little.
I still cry.
That, what do I call it? Part, like when Nynaeve is traveling through all the borderlands.
Raising support for Lan.
Yeah.
That's my favorite scene.
It's up there. I mean, that's definitely one. Like, I'm sort of tearing up a little bit just thinking about it. Like, it's one of those scenes that is just so powerfully emotional for these characters that you've lived with for such a long time.
Nynaeve is like definitely in my top 5 favorite characters too. Matt being the highest for one reason or another. Just like him a lot. Nynaeve's way up there. A lot of her scenes are great.
Oh, so many.
When she first learns to channel freely. We've joked about this before, like all he had to do was kill her.
In retrospect,
all that effort. Should have just dunked her head under some water and held her down for a while.
God, she's stubborn. Doesn't mean I don't love her, though.
She gets number 1 slot for me, and then Matt gets number 2.
Yeah, I feel like I have similar.
It's like splitting hairs.
Right.
But
I mean, it's like asking me which one of my children is my favorite. Like, I love them all, and I love them all for very different reasons.
Yeah. I mean, I can say like Nynaeve and Matt, but after that, it gets really hard to rank them.
And like, I love Perrin just because I think I identify with him quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But that,
No, he's a great character. And I mean, they're all really different. I could see why people would like I know Perrin, you say Perrin's one of your favorites all the time. I really like Fortuna, but just because she's so small and she's so powerful.
Right.
I don't know. There's something that I
And
really like about that.
makes Matt go crazy.
Yeah.
But like Egwene might be my favorite character.
Yeah, I mean, she's super badass at the end.
Right. And just the fact that she is always trying to be the best and succeeding is something that I really admire.
There's a great piece of fan art floating around the internet. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's Egwene like standing on a ledge holding the white fluted rod, blowing a bracken out of the sky.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I love that.
It's a good one.
And then I just,
Raken.
I mean, Perrin and it's just a weave.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, I love the Teleron Riyadh scenes. So a lot of my favorite characters really are Lanfear, Dreamers. That's really some of my favorite stuff. And, obviously Perrin with the whole, when he supercharges himself with Teleron Riyadh and becomes just a teleporting badass.
Yeah.
That's just amazing.
Perrin in the Two Rivers is, I think, the height of Perrin for me. Not that I think he gets worse, like I'm not one of those people, but
right.
It's just so good. When he becomes a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just doesn't accept it yet.
When he becomes like a real king rather than a general.
Right.
I always think of these characters as going through 4 stages. They become heroes, kings. There's a third stage I'm forgetting. The 4th stage is God. What the hell is the 3rd stage?
Legend is the last one, right?
Well, God, legend. Yeah, I guess legend would be 5. Yeah, but I think of like more than kings, but less than gods, and like they lead more Yeah, well, it's almost like they lead like emperors. I think like they lead a coalition of people. They become
more like an emperor.
Yeah, more like an emperor, right? Perrin has queens swearing fealty to him. Rand has queens swearing fealty to him. Matt has queens marrying him. Like,
well, so does Rand.
Right? Yeah. I mean, they all become, and Elaine becomes a queen. Egwene becomes more than a queen. Nynaeve doesn't need it. She's just Nynaeve. She doesn't need the title. But yeah, I mean, all these characters become more. They go through this journey where they're heroes, then kings, then more than kings, then gods.
Yeah, and at the end, they're gods.
They have godlike powers. Yeah, I mean Rand especially, but I mean Matt with his just stupid good luck is almost a godlike power, and the memories.
Yeah,
and then Perrin with his teleporting, tracking you anywhere, ridiculousness with
Teleron Road.
That's just crazy, and of course Rand with his super one power.
Yeah.
Jesus Rand.
That's right.
Or like an earth god. That's the way I see him.
Yeah.
Matt's.
The dragon is one with the land is one with the dragon.
Matt's like some kind of combination between Odin and his brother Loki.
Yeah. The queen is married to the land.
I'm one with the Force. And the Force is with me.
One with me?
Is that?
I think it is. Yeah, something like that. I am a stick.
Lan tells a good little short story in the next chapter about a little bug that lives in the blight called a stick.
That's right.
He was like, and the bug will never chase you or bite you unless you touch it. And when it bites you, it won't poison you.
It digests you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think of Sanderson. There's a scene where Shallan is trying to soul cast a stick. There's in the audiobooks, it's really funny because they give the stick a voice. And it has the line, I am a stick. And it's, I am a stick. And she's like, no, I want you to be something else. And it goes, I am a stick. One of the funnier scenes I find.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, actually.
That's good. That's great. Yeah. No, I'm gonna go ahead and cut that out. That's
I am
fine.
Groot. You can cut that out too.
That's true. Well, and Groot is a stick. That's true. Yeah.
So Lan?
No, I think actually I don't have anything else to really say about Lan, because the next scene we have is Moiraine showing up after giving Fain the Inquisition.
What did he say? Rand demanded. Matt rose, and Perrin too. Country oaf, Agelmar muttered. And Agelmar's just constantly getting annoyed by their lack of decorum.
Wait, was that Agelmar or Lan?
Agelmar. Did I say Lan?
No, that's just
It's-
a Lan quote.
Oh, no, yeah.
It's something Lan says all
Agelmar
the
says
time.
that. Country oaf. Because you're doing it wrong.
I never get tired when characters call the boys sheep herders or oafs or strawhead or whatever.
It's why I love Min so much.
Yeah.
Just constantly calling Rand a shepherd.
Somebody
Damn
has
it,
to.
you have me saying it now. Sheep herder.
Sheep herder. Country
Did he
oaf.
learn anything, Aes Sedai? Or is he simply a madman? He is mad, Moiraine said, or close to it. But there is nothing simple about Pat and Fain.
This is when we get the Fain exclamation.
Yeah, and this gets pretty long, but Moiraine says essentially that it was 3 years ago this summer that Pat and Fain was distilled the first time.
Right. I wouldn't even say distilled, almost like
I think of it as kind of a process. Like if the first time he's like an ale, the second time he's like a brandy, and then later with his exposure to other evil forces, he's like straight whiskey.
It's a good analogy.
Just gets more powerful and
more
poisonous each time.
But yeah, I think the first time he's sort of given this impetus to hunt, like he's got this.
The Dark One makes him his hound the first time, I think.
Right.
Well, she says, 3 years Fain has been hunting you for the Dark One. And they don't believe it. And she says, Fain told me everything, Rand, or almost everything. I believe he managed to hold back something important, despite all I could do, but he said enough. 3 years ago, a half-man came for him in a town in Murandy. Fain was terrified, of course, but it is considered a very great honor among dark friends to be so summoned. He was brought north to the Blight, to the Blasted Lands, to Shale Ghul, where he met a man with eyes of fire who named himself Baal-Zaman, which, and I thought this was interesting, this is kind of the first time I've really been able to reflect on this, or reflected on it, is that none of this, perhaps, is the Dark One.
Right, it's all Baal-Zaman using the true power.
Right, this is all Ishmael.
Ishmael, yeah.
That may have made Fain himself? Or with the help of the Dark One?
I mean, he's obviously using the true power.
Yeah.
Which is the Dark One's power to do whatever he did to Fain.
But when I hear with eyes of fire, it's Ishmael. It's not the Dark One.
And he's bringing him to Shale Ghul.
He could have just taken him to Shale Ghul.
Yeah, and because often we hear that things are possible there that are possible nowhere else. You know, Fain is somehow altered in a way that's, I think, almost outside the pattern. I also wonder if there are other hounds out there. I feel like he wouldn't have done this for just one dark friend. He would have done it for multiple in different areas. And the reason Fain was distilled down is that he actually was the one who found Rand.
Yeah.
Counter argument to that is that the Dark One, so this is a little bit philosophical, but the Dark One is the counter to the Creator. And so he acts according to his nature, which is the Lord of Chaos. So I get the impression that he doesn't have super clear directives. He just kind of, I don't know, I mean, how he, it's unclear how he touches the world other than that he does. But it seems to be more that the Forsaken do the most, destruction until, of course, then there's Shaidar Haran, who kind of corrals the Forsaken.
Sure.
But
and,
I mean, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this.
That's the way I more or less see it. The Dark One rarely, if ever, really touches the world, except for with the bubbles of evil, which seem largely chaotic.
Weather.
And the weather. And
the
like,
weather.
The pattern bending, but that could be because the apocalypse is coming. It's not.
He's also able to
defined.
resurrect people.
Yeah.
Basically, I think my point is that the Dark One doesn't necessarily take an active hand in things. He more just exist to sow discord and chaos and to help that along.
Yeah, I mean, I think he directs the Forsaken
I'm
to
nodding.
create that chaos. Because I mean, I honestly think the Dark One's major goal is to turn Rand to the dark side. Right?
Yeah.
Because you were saying the Dark One doesn't take a direct hand. The Dark One himself cannot destroy the pattern. He would have done it if he could.
Right.
What he wants is Rand to destroy the pattern on the mountaintop. And so I don't know if I've said this before, but I think the entire point of all of the books leading up to the mountaintop is to make Rand as depressed and desperate and despair, to give Rand despair. That's the whole point of the Lord of Chaos, is to create chaos around Rand so that he despairs and basically suicides and takes the pattern with him. So, I mean, I think the Dark One would absolutely be searching for him, and I think even Moiraine says the Dark One may have impressed some of her purpose onto Fain.
Some of his purpose.
Fain, although he wants to kill Rand, he really,
I think that's more to be free than anything.
yeah.
It says
It's more
he feared. Oh, he hates his master for them, what the Dark One did to him, as much as he fears him. He's just, I don't know, it sucks to be him.
I think that sums it up pretty well. Is Fain, oh man, he gets the short end of the stick. But he was a dark friend for 40 years. He's done
not
some
a good
horrendous
guy.
things.
Moiraine says that.
Yeah.
She also says here, I thought this was interesting, that Fain had been chosen because of where he did his peddling. No, she said quickly when they stirred, not the two rivers only, not then. But the Father of Lies knew roughly to find what he sought.
I guess that is a good point. There wouldn't have been other Fains out there because the Dark One had a pretty good idea
Where Rand was.
Based on the records. Right? That's a New Spring
the
thing.
Black
That if you go back, exactly, they
Yeah.
know where the records of all the young boys are. And so they're, at least through process of elimination, have probably been able to kill all the Owens and the other folks that maybe
Could have
been Rand.
Yeah.
Could have been the Dragon Reborn.
Owen, who lived somewhere in western Camelin.
Right. Western Camelin or Western Andor?
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean. Western Andor.
Western Andor, which, funny enough, is exactly, Rand's further west, but...
Yeah. It seems that both Tarvalin and the Dark One, or Moiraine refers to it as Tarvalin, but both the light side and the dark side both had a similar amount of information as to where this boy might be.
Yeah, except the light side in this case is Suan and Moiraine.
Right.
Because they basically, there was the prophecy
Mm-hmm.
by, what was her name?
Katara.
Katara dies. The Amerlin seat hears it and sends all of her Aes Sedai out to look for him. Those Aes Sedai are all murdered, including the Amerlin seat.
Yeah.
By
The Black Aja.
Yeah. What's begins with a G? She's Red Aja and Black.
Galena?
Galena.
Ugh,
Galena is the one who murdered.
she did
Yeah, when she's being tortured by Savannah and
Garava.
Yeah. She thinks that she was, she toppled two Amerlin seats, and one of them was
Katara.
Well,
No,
Katara
Katara
was the one who had the prophecy. I don't remember the name of the Amerlin seat.
The Amerlin seat at the time. That's right.
She was the second in command. I'm totally blanking.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Whatever.
It's late.
It's a story within a story. But yeah, so that whole thing left only the two of them who knew the whole story, but lots of Black Aja who knew the whole story. And that's one of the reasons why Moiraine is so careful with who she trusts. Here, when they're going up into the Blight, Ingtar really, really wants to come. And she's like, nope, just the people who are part of the pattern. I think a big part of why she limits the party size, everyone in the party has been viewed by Min. And she knows they are not, therefore, dark friends.
Yeah.
Any one of the Borderlanders could be a dark friend. But she does not want to say that to Lord Agelmar, but I think that might be the reason that she insists that no one comes along to help.
I mean, Ingtar brings them right to the edge.
Well, and Ingtar absolutely wants to come.
And
He
Yeah.
would have been the first person
Yeah.
with them, and he's a dark friend. So, yeah, I mean, she is totally right to not take any Borderlanders with her. She's clever.
Yeah. Thorough, at the very least. I wanted to read this last bit about Fain.
Sure.
Moiraine has a little more to say. She says, Fain said he has been made the Dark One's hound, and in a way, he is right. The Father of Lies set Fain to hunt, first changing him so that he could carry out that hunt. It is the things done to him. It is the things done to bring about those changes that Fain fears to remember. He hates his master for them as much as he fears him. Oh, she just read a little bit of this. So Fain was sent sniffing and hunting through all the villages around Berlan, and all the way to the Mountains of Mist, and down to the Taryn, and across into the two rivers. ... After that, Fain was taken to Sheol Ghul again, and his mind was distilled.
Right.
There's like a process here where he seems to get really close, and then Ishmael summons him back to Sheol Ghul and does the process again.
I sort of think of it as casting out a net and then saying, hey, we know that he's somewhere in this area. We want you to go travel the entire area, meet everyone you possibly can, and then we'll sort of run that through the criteria of the Dragon Reborn and, you know, really amp and feed that back to you.
Mm-hmm. And the boys say that year he spent like a week or two just hanging around.
They thought he was sick or in love with some girl.
Yeah, fell in love with a girl or something.
But he was just absorbing the
sensing his
sensing
surroundings
the
or
people
something.
around him. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure what he was initially charged with to find. I have to assume it's something Dragon Reborn, soulish. I'm really not sure. But he's out there trying to sense the soul of the Dragon Reborn.
And then Moiraine mentions a third occasion where Ishmael pulls him into a dream and does something else to him.
And she gives a little bit of a sort of, we see the Dark One breaking free. I think that's not the Dark One. I think that's Ishmael.
Yeah,
breaking
it is.
free. Yeah.
I feel like Moiraine would know the difference.
She suspects, especially later.
I also, when I had that thought while I was reading this earlier, like I feel like Moiraine would know the difference between the Dark One and a Forsaken. But if she did know the difference, would she tell anyone? How would it benefit her to tell everyone that this is likely not the Dark One? It wouldn't.
I mean, the end result would be the same,
Exactly.
right? It kind of.
It only lights a fire under everyone's ass and gets them doing what she needs them to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, it's splitting hairs. Is it the Dark One? Is it an agent of the Dark One acting in the Dark One's interest? It's the same basic thing.
Yeah.
Using the power of the Dark One, you know.
Even to Moiraine, Ishmael should be almost as terrifying as the Dark One himself.
Oh
being
yeah.
free.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And I think later she definitely figures out it's a guy, like when dead body shows up and she's like, yeah, it's not the Dark One. There's a rotting dead body. But earlier, I think even earlier than that, she assumes that he's not the Dark One. But at this point, I don't think she knows yet. But that's just opinion. She doesn't have enough details. She doesn't know whether the guy with eyes of fire in Rand's dreams are a Forsaken or the Dark One himself.
Yeah.
She really has nothing to differentiate between the two.
And then she goes on to basically instruct Agelmar to brick off the waygate that she had to blow open.
Oh, yeah. She lets him know that the Trollocs are using it to travel.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing we've talked about before is I sort of speculated about Fain not being able to go back and get his wagons because he was pulled to follow Rand.
Yeah.
Here we find out he wasn't pulled to follow Rand. He was actually basically kidnapped by the Myrddraal and
Uh-huh.
forced to run with the Trollocs. And that's one of the reasons why he's so haggard when he gets to Whitebridge and Camelin,
Yeah.
is he's just,
And then a second Myrddraal takes him near Shadar Logoth.
right. And that's the Myrddraal that attacks Tom.
Is that right? Attacks Tom in, what was the name of that town? That was Whitebridge?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's basically one Forsaken that has Fain all the way up until Shadar Logoth.
Or one Myrddraal?
No, one Myrddraal, yes. Sorry. One Myrddraal that has Fain all the way up until Shadar Logoth. And then
I'm smirking because I just looked at our recording time for this episode.
Is
We're
it
at like 2
ridiculous?
hours.
Oh, Jesus, really? Yeah,
It's
been a long
there's
one.
a lot going on in this chapter.
There's so much going on.
Yeah.
There's so much. Too.
It's okay. This can just
Yeah.
be a really long chat. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I can cut out all my likes and ums.
Oh, we cut
We
out
will.
all of ours, too.
Yeah.
That's part of the editing process. That's why it takes me so long to edit these files. Well, actually,
Yeah.
that's what Jon Horrill's been doing for me. So thank you, Jon, for cutting out all this stuff, because you're probably sitting here listening to us say this right now.
Thank you again,
Yeah.
Jon Horrill of London. London?
So Fain and then Agelmar tries to convince her to follow his army to Tarwin's Gap.
Yeah, backtrack a little bit.
Or
He has to follow, before he reached Barrelon, another Fade found him. So he loses one Fade in Shadar Logoth,
Right.
and then shortly after that,
Okay.
another Fade finds him. And that's the one that's with him until he gets to Barrelon. And then he runs into Rand and Barrelon. Rand tells him where they're staying.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Fade comes after them the next morning and attacks Tom. But that's the Fade that picks him up here. That make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
She kind of sums all this up by saying, by the time he reached Camelin, he could feel his quarry, even when it was a mile away. Here, in the cells below, he would sometimes look up without realizing what he was doing. He was looking in the direction of this room. Rand felt a sudden itch between his shoulder blades.
So it's kind of like a one-sided evil warder bond, and you can't think about anything else or eat or
Yeah.
sleep.
More or less.
More or less, yeah. Just driven. Oh,
So what we know.
here's a quote I like. Baalzamon appeared like a flickering candle flame, vanishing and reappearing, never in the same place twice. I assume that's him true power traveling,
Yeah.
because we see him, that described as just popping in and out of existence, unlike with one power where you have to make a gateway.
With the true power, you don't actually have to move to travel. With the one power, you have to step
Right,
once, but you have to step.
right.
Good catch.
There's some really dark stuff in here. I don't know if there's anything else in between, but
Just Fain claims it was Baalzamon himself who drove the Myrddraal into Shadar Logoth.
yeah.
So we know, obviously, that's how we know that Ishmael was there.
Oh, that reminds me. Agelmar says, it couldn't be the Dark One himself. And Moiraine says, Fain spoke the truth as he saw it. He could not lie to me, though he hid much. And it made me wonder what Moiraine did. What did she do to make
That's-
him, to
yeah.
be so sure that he was telling the truth?
I wonder if she could just tell if he was lying. Not that he could.
Maybe.
I don't know. That's.
Ooh, maybe that's one of the Blue Aja's secret leaves.
Or maybe it's a bit of
I don't know.
compulsion. I don't know.
Don't they? Yeah. Doesn't the Blue Aja have one of their secret weaves as a type of compulsion?
Or is it a truth spell? Like a truth
something.
serum type thing? I got nothing.
I could look it up right now, but I'm not gonna. It's out there
Well,
somewhere.
what's interesting is that it might have been Varen thinks this when she reflects on that Wilders either when they accidentally channel,
Yeah.
they oftentimes present with that little bit of compulsion. So
It's one of two, right? It's either the listening like Moiraine has, or just that little bit of compulsion.
So the Aes Sedai push that down when they come to the tower, and make sure they never do it. But that means that they all know it.
A little bit of it, yeah.
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 So
At least many do.
Yeah.
And Moiraine, being as strong as she is able to pick up tricks pretty quickly.
Yeah. We know that Moiraine can do the listening trick.
Yeah.
Doesn't she say at some point that her first experiences channeling were untrained? That's why she likes to use she still likes to use the little
She used
glass
her
piece
gemstone to
listen. Right.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I never thought of Moiraine as a wilder, but I guess she was.
Right. And I think I can't remember the whole story now, but I think that's how she was discovered, because she was listening in on someone talking like in the court of Kyriet, and there happened to be an Aes Sedai there.
That makes sense.
It's like, hey,
I notice
with me.
you're sticking a weave of power halfway across the court. It's real obvious because I can see it.
Why don't you
Yeah.
come with me?
And she's powerful. So, I mean, I imagine anyone who got near her immediately sensed it.
Yeah.
But she's young enough that she wouldn't be considered a wilder. They would just, because she was 16.
I guess. I don't know. I'm always a little unsure about who gets classified as a wilder and who doesn't.
Yeah, I get the impression it's like you've aged out of novice training, so they're all
I didn't
about
think it was a
novice
wilder
training.
thing. I thought it was like if you have the spark and start channeling before you get to the tower, you're a wilder. But if you have to be trained,
No, I think it's if you are not of a society that goes to the White Tower like the Aiel, you would never be trained under them, so you'd be a wilder, but you're too old to go to the tower. Although they would try to make Avian to go to the tower
yeah,
if they could. She's like at that age
I
where.
think up to like 18.
But Nynaeve's a true wilder because when she goes to the White Tower, they just fast track her to accepted.
Right. Nynaeve has the block and everything.
Right.
I don't know that there are really grades for this. I think it's just kind of, at some point you become too difficult to teach, so they don't want you. Whether it be that you're too old and you won't take to the discipline very well, or whether it be that you have a block and it's just going to take too much effort to teach you to not kill yourself.
So I honestly think the too old thing is entirely brought about by the Black Oddjaw, because they only want to recruit impressionable young novices that they can convert to the dark side.
I like that.
That a lot of the... Plus, it helps you reduce the number of initiates and weakens the White Tower.
Yeah. And we see later when Egwene starts taking anyone who can learn how to channel, it turns into a really helpful, like there are women who have raised children who raise children who are novices, and they're useful people. Grandmas are useful people to have around.
Well, and once they start channeling, they start getting younger. They become ageless.
Yeah.
That's
a good point.
That's the whole thing. Like they really do. I guess they don't become ageless because they don't swear on the oath rod yet, but they do start to become to slow. Basically, you see them become the same age as someone who's 90 years old and has been channeling that whole time.
No, I think they slow at the age that they are at.
The one old woman who's super powerful does actually appear to get younger.
Are we thinking of the same woman?
Sharina,
absolutely. She does. There's one line where it's like, it's not she's getting younger. It's like she's looking a little younger. It's just like a passing comment. Like she doesn't look as old as she used to. And she's not ageless because she hasn't sworn on the oath rods. She's actually not just slowing, but I think she's becoming the age she would be if she'd been channeling.
I like the theory.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's some weird stuff with age and channeling, with stilling and, becoming a youth again with Swan and Lyanna.
Well, I wonder this thing of like, okay, so if Nynaeve was never found, she got through the channeling sickness, so she was going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
But she wasn't she's never properly channeling.
Mm-hmm. Except to heal.
Would she live long? Well, but yeah. So that's my question. Like, would she have lived to 800 years because she's so powerful, or because she's not properly channeling, touching the source
I think we
as a
had
channeler is trying
this
to?
debate in one of the earlier
I think,
episodes.
yeah.
That we, thought it was a combination of power and frequency of use.
But if Sharina becomes less aged, then that kind of answers that question. I don't know.
Well, she wasn't
Sorry.
yeah, no, but she wasn't channeling at all before she started to lose some age.
Oh, that's true. Because they just started seeking them out.
Right.
Or recruiting.
Right. She didn't have a spark.
It's confusing and interesting.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure he has the rules written down somewhere, but they're not obvious. So where are we with Fain?
I'll read this paragraph because that's another one I really liked. If Fain was half mad by the time he reached Camelin, he sank even further when he realized that the only two of those he sought were there. He was compelled to find all of you, but he could do no other than follow the two who were there, either.
Awkwardly constructed sentence.
Yeah. He spoke of screaming when the waygate opened in Camelin. The knowledge of how to do it was in his mind. He does not know how it came there. His hands moved of their own accord, burning with the fires of Baal-Zaman when he tried to stop them. The owner of the shop, who came to investigate the noise, Fain murdered, not because he had to, out of envy, that the man could walk freely from the cellar while his feet carried him inexorably into the ways.
So I'm wondering if maybe the part of Baal-Zaman that was impressed upon Fain, Baal-Zaman obviously knows how to open the ways and make use of them.
Yeah.
And if that's where that knowledge came from.
There's something extra going on there. And Fain's inability to control himself, because I don't think that he's compelled. I don't think this is compulsion.
Other than the compulsion to follow Rand.
Yeah, but I mean, is that regular compulsion in the way we know it?
No.
This is some special thing that I don't know that we see anywhere else.
Well, Fain is something we don't see anywhere else. He's such a unique set of properties that it's hard to really. He's sort of the Joker in the deck of cards. He doesn't really follow any other rules.
Yeah, but Ishmael does something to him.
Definitely. And that allows him to open the ways, forces him to open the ways.
Twice in Shale Ghul itself and once in Teleran Riyadh, where things that can happen outside of the one and true power happen can be made to happen in the world of dreams and the Dark One's special magics.
And he meets the Black
And
Wind.
that happens right
that's
here.
that's the next.
Yeah.
The Black Wind, because he's following them through the ways. And I think we mentioned this when they got out. Fain was right behind them, and the Black Wind was right behind them.
Yeah.
And the two encountered each other in the Black Wind was the one that was scared.
Then Fain was the one you sensed following us, Egwene said. Lan nodded. How did he escape the Black Wind? He escaped, and he did not, Moiraine said. The Black Wind caught him, and he claimed to understand the voices. Some greeted him as like to them, others feared him. No sooner did the wind envelop Fain than it fled. The light preserve us, Loyal's whisper rumbled like a giant bumblebee.
And from now on, the Black Wind seeks Rand in the same way that Fain does.
Yeah.
It's always there when he tries to open a gateway.
Whatever Ishmael did to Fain, Fain did to Mashin Shin. Or if it's like a echo.
Sure, I'll buy it.
Yep, works for me.
Yep.
I'm just coming to that conclusion now, but Ishmael put something in Fain or changed Fain in some way, and then when Fain comes into contact with Mashin Shin, the Black Wind absorbs part of that.
Which makes sense because they're both of the Dark One.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what I see is maybe there's the two parts of the Black Wind. The one that sees him as a friend sees what the Dark One put into him as a friend. And the part that fears him fears the Shadar Logoth part of him.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
the Mashing Shin versus the Mashadar.
I get them confused.
The Black Wind and the White Mist.
Yeah.
Let's see. Then we get Agelmar's comment about the boys being channelers that we talked about a little bit earlier.
Yeah. Moiraine says, I must take them and no others, Lord Agelmar. They are the ones who will fight the battle at the eye of the world. Agelmar's jaw dropped, and he stared at Rand and Mat and Perrin. And he says, they aren't... You're not Red Aja, Moiraine, said I, but surely not even you would. They are Ta'veren, Moiraine said soothingly. The pattern weaves itself around them. Already the Dark One has tried to kill each of them more than once. 3 Ta'veren in one place are enough to change the life around them, as surely as a whirlpool changes the path of a straw. That's the non-answer we were talking about before.
Right. Yep. They're
Just
Ta'veren.
Like, yeah, they may be able to channel. At least one of them definitely can.
Yeah.
But
no, they're
rather
Ta'veren.
than saying that.
She's so good. So good at avoiding it.
The next thing I have is Agelmar says something like, I can't see it. They're just farm boys. Are you sure? And Moiraine says, the old blood split out like a river breaking into 1,000 times 1,000, but sometimes streams join together and make a river again. The old blood of Manetheren is strong and pure in almost all of these young men. Can you doubt the strength of Manetheren's blood, Lord Agelmar? And
almost all.
Rand glanced sideways at the Aes Sedai. Almost all.
She can't lie.
That almost. No, she can't. No, she can't. She tries.
Yeah.
She tries to slip that one by you.
Almost all of these young
Almost
men.
all these. Except that redheaded one over there who looks nothing like
Except
the
the one
other
who's
two.
clearly... Yeah.
Oh, and he has this little moment with Nynaeve when he looks at her and she shakes her head.
Yeah, she says she didn't
She didn't
tell
say.
Moiraine. But, I mean, it's so obvious. I mean, everyone thinks he looks like an Aiel.
I mean, rereading this, it's so obvious. Because before we meet the Aiel, we don't know what Rand, like, we don't know what Aiel looked like and how shocking that would be.
But especially after that encounter in the palace, when they're all like, you don't look like a Two Rivers guy. You look like anyway.
Yeah.
And then he asks Gawain, and Gawain's like, yeah, you look like an Aiel. You know?
Wrap a shufa around your head and you'd be the image of an Aielman.
Totally.
Rand al'Thor from very far west.
And a little far east. And you look a little bit like my cousin for some reason. Like my brother.
You look like that portrait on
No,
the
the family. Good God, the family connections are crazy. Nynaeve marries Lan, who's related to Isam, who becomes one with Luke, who's brother to Tigraine, who's the mother of Galad and Rand, who
was married to Tarangale, who was Moraine's half brother.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and he ended up fathering Elaine and Gawain, who is, fathered by Tom.
Speculative.
It's all, well.
Oh, maybe not physically, but...
Not physically. Yeah, just being,
they were
maybe.
Emotionally, yeah.
We can't say for sure.
Certainly later he acts a little bit fatherly towards her.
Yeah. He's a father figure, for sure.
Totally. Even though he killed her father.
Yes, he did do that. And then marries Moiraine. Hey, I killed your brother. He sucked, though. Is it cool?
Oh, yeah.
But sure, her family had a lot of problems.
You want to talk about a modern family. That's...
And then I just have the last paragraph to read. I don't know if anyone has anything else.
The only thing I said is that she says the boys must sleep close to me to prevent the Dark One from having another chance at attacking them.
Yeah.
It's just, I think I was speculating about how close they had to be, and it sounds like she has to be pretty damn close for her protection to take. It sounds like she can't even necessarily be like...
Doesn't Rand say like Rand mentions a distance later
Oh, I missed that.
that like she sleeps so far from the boys, but it's I forget what he says, but spans or something.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a couple of feet rather.
Yeah.
And if she's further than that, the protection is not effective.
I think a span is
I think a span is a
3
foot
paces
or a yard. A pace is a foot. Well, no, a pace is a yard.
Yeah.
A foot is a foot.
A span is a certain amount of paces.
Okay.
I think a
Oh,
span
geez.
is about 5 feet. Because a foot,
2 paces,
2 paces,
is only
yeah.
10 inches. In the Wheel of Time.
In
It's
the-
really, don't even bother. It's,
I don't. Yeah, no, I don't. Kelsey, do you have anything else you wanted to throw in there?
Nope.
All right, let's read this last paragraph.
Okay. Then let us go to our rooms, Moiraine said. We must leave with the sun, for time grows short. These young men must sleep close to me. Time is too short before the battle to allow the Dark One to strike at them. Too short. Rand felt her eyes on him, studying him and his friends, weighing their strength, then he shivered. Too short.
That's it. Love it.
That's a good one, guys.
Yep.
Getting kind of a late-ish start tonight.
Yeah, I'd say this is about 7 o'clock,
Yeah.
about as late as we get.
Patrick, was a little unprepared. My birthday was yesterday, and I just haven't really done much over the last 3 days other than hang out with my girlfriend and
Well, you took a trip earlier this week.
oh yeah, over the weekend I went with 2 of my buddies. 2 guys I met on the PCT. One he's renting the extra room in my apartment right now. We just hiked the Timberline Trail, which is 40 miles. We did it in 2 days, but it was brutal. When Youngblood, calling him Youngblood because that's his trail name. When kid's 21 and he's a triple crowner. He's hiked all 3 long trails. He just turned 21.
So he started when he was 19
Yeah.
or 18.
Yeah, when he was 18. So Youngblood was like, "Yo, me and Saint Nick are gonna go hike the Timberline Trail, and we figure we'll just do it in 2 days. It's only like 38 point some odd miles." He was like, "We could totally do it in 2 days." So I was like, "Yeah, sure." We get there, we're like in the parking lot. I'm like looking at the maps and the up and down elevation, like the total elevation gain and loss, and I was like, "Dude, it's like 11,000 total elevation gain over the 2 days." He was like, yeah, it should be fine. Should be fine. Those are really big climbing days.
Okay.
To climb like 5,500, 6,000 feet at all. Yeah. I was shredded at the end of it. But we did it. I mean, we hiked the 40 miles in like 35 hours. And the trail was really damaged too. There was a lot of washouts. There were some burn spots. And we kept losing the trail, so we kept like having to turn back and re-navigate, which was frustrating. So we probably ended up walking a lot further than the actual 40 miles, but it was fun and it was beautiful.
Was that near Portland?
Yeah, it's a little backpacking trail that it's just a circuit around the base of Mount Hood. So yeah, that's just maybe 60 miles east of Portland.
There's some great hiking outdoor areas near Portland. It's probably one of its biggest attractions is the fact that there's so much to do. You can go up to the mountains and ski most of the year, or you can head out to the ocean, or you can head up good hiking trails in the mountains. There's waterfalls, there's rivers.
I think it's kind of easy even for me to forget, and I live here, but there's Portland, Eugene, Vancouver, and then the
Seattle.
country. And then there's no real there's no middle ground. There's medium cities and
Right.
wilderness.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
farmland.
Seattle's pretty far away, being up in
Oh,
Washington.
yeah, that's true.
It takes about 4 hours.
Yeah, which I mean, I know
a
on
cool city, though.
Texas scales, that's nothing. But
That's next door.
yeah, for us, that's kind of far away.
A third of the way to El Paso.
I don't hop on my bike and head up
Right.
there. I definitely.
If I have to go
Yeah,
more than
yeah.
15 blocks to a store, I'm like, I'm going through Amazon or something. This is too much.
Yeah, I love the Pacific Northwest. It's beautiful. Definitely jealous. I guess I've been to Seattle twice. I've never been to Oregon, Canada a couple times, but Northern California.
Probably got the gist of it.
Yeah.
Northern California and Northern Washington are
They're bookends.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
Oregon.
Yeah.
Split the difference, and that's what Portland's like. Now we're just entering the rainy season, and the leaves everywhere.
We're still not yet fall. We're trying. It's not quite getting there yet.
Well, I mean, Houston's got that 1 month of winter.
Yeah.
In January,
and then 1 month of constant rain.
Yeah.
Hurricanes.
I will admit, I miss the thunderstorms in Houston. I haven't seen a thunderstorm in a long time. And I just remember watching them come down the plains, and the lightning so steady you could read by it, and the thunder just being this constant rumble, overlapping rumble.
We don't really get good ones here, good storms. It'll rain for a long time, but
it's
we
great
don't get,
reading weather, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. We get the weeping from Sanderson's Stormlight Archive. That's what it is in Portland for 6 months. Just a steady, slow drizzle. We actually get less rain than a lot of other places. We just get it spread out over more days.
That's what I was about to say. Houston actually, I'm pretty sure, gets more annual rainfall than that area, because it's you get these huge weather events, and then that's your rainfall for the year.
Yeah.
And the clay doesn't absorb it at all.
Right. Yeah.
It just flows over the ground.
Yup. And stays for days.
So, I mean, a big part of why I really wanted to have you on here, and I think you offered, is a female perspective. Because so many fans of this series are dudes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know a lot of people who are listening to our podcast are female, and I really like the gender dynamics in the book.
Right.
And I really want to hear a perspective from someone who, and I'm sure you're aware of all the vitriol out there towards the women.
Yeah.
Of
yeah.
the Wheel of Time.
Seth and I have talked about this a good amount before, and we have to wonder if it's because so many fans are male that it's easier to dislike the female characters. Is that what's happening there?
I've thought a lot about this, and I think that there's definitely some of that happening. There's some of it is Jordan and his writing of the Aes Sedai and his characterization of strong women. I can see the argument that there's a lot of similarities, but I think that argument's a little bit, overblown, because his character development is amazing. All the characters are their own people. They can say a single sentence and it tells you a million things about that character. And I think that a lot of the female characters, even if they're not someone that you would necessarily want to be friends with, are still interesting characters. And a lot of fans just hate them, beyond what I think is normal.
Yeah, to an unreasonable degree.
Yeah.
I mean, because I've always said, and I've always thought, that the women characters were written to be people in the same way the male characters were written to be people. Right. And I really see it as a bit of a Rorschach test in terms of if you like the male characters and hate the female characters, you really need to examine why these two groups of people with similar flaws and similar ambitions and similar goals and successes have such different responses in your head.
Yeah, well, yeah, just like in the real world. Egwene is so ambitious that it's like almost a character flaw.
Right. But at the same
Right,
time,
yeah.
we have Rand taking over the continent,
Right, which is totally fine.
which is
right?
totally fine. You know, and like, and Egwene gets
Sure.
nailed and dinged and criticized for wanting to be the best at whatever she does constantly.
Yeah.
I don't think we can deny that Jordan created a lot of mirror images in the series.
He loves doing that, and I love analyzing them.
Totally.
all the character parallels.
Heck yeah, that's why we're here.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the good guys, bad guys, you've got the males, you've got the females. And, you know, he makes that pretty explicit with Sidine and Sidar.
Yeah.
And I just love the parallels between the different male and female characters. And
Like Matt and
way-
Nynaeve are total foils for one
Yep.
another.
Rand and Egwene.
Yeah.
Perrin and Elaine a little bit, because they both become basically monarchs of Andor.
Yeah. I was gonna say Queen of Humans, King of Wolves, but
Sure. Yeah, that works too.
that's what popped into my head.
And then with the dark, you know, obviously all the three boys have their nemesis. You've got Randon, Moradin, or Ishmael, or whatever you want to call them. Perrin and Slayer.
Matt and the Golem, or Fain, I guess, with his dagger.
Yeah, I guess Fain would be the more accurate one. And then, but the women also sort of have their equivalents in the Forsaken.
Yeah.
I mean,
And it's-
Nynaeve and Moghedien.
Something that I had forgotten about, but while I was doing the research for the powers episode or the magic system episode, I noticed that both Robert Jordan and Sanderson said at some point that, or they made it clear that, like, although male channelers are more stronger, like, or are more strong, whatever you want to call it, like pound per pound, like if you're going to
Individually.
like, blow something up, who can make the bigger explosion.
Sure.
But they both went to a little bit of length to explain that they're supposed to be roughly equal, where men are stronger in the power in like a forceful sense. Women are supposed to be more dexterous in the weaving, so they're faster and more graceful.
Okay.
So I guess the kind of point is that if it comes down to a fight, it's not a clear win.
And we see that many times where Rand goes one-on-one with one of the women of Forsaken and does
And
not come out
gets his
necessarily
ass
on
kicked.
top. Yeah.
And land fear over and over.
Yeah. Well, Land.
Yeah. And I also think it's mentioned by Moiraine that men are better at earth and fire, and women at spirit. I don't know. I don't remember. It's not something I...
Yeah.
Yeah, spirit
Water
and
and
water.
wind.
Because they all
Water
end
and
up
wind.
being really good at it by the last book anyway, so
Right.
It
Yeah.
it doesn't really play out.
And Egwene is one of the exceptions to that rule. Like it's a rule that there are exceptions to. So there's, I think, without my notes out, I'm not sure which of the Ashamen it was, but is it Narishma or someone is talented with air?
Oh, I don't know.
One of the
Ashamen.
Ashamen we see a lot, and Egwene is talented with earth.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the Forsaken dismissed that as ridiculous, that men are stronger in one power
Oh, really?
and two. And yeah, I think that ends up being Morainism, that she's kind of,
She might just be wrong.
She might just be wrong. It might just be like something that's like they don't train older women in the tower, and women, you know, the women they do train tend to be like, they expect them to be better at wind and water, so they are better at wind and water. It's placebo effect.
Moraine's not always accurate.
No, she is true, but not
Right.
right.
Correct.
There's a good amount of that in the series where
I mean, even early on, I think someone said their favorite fake news was that the horn would work for the dark side.
Right, yeah.
fake news.
And that's Moiraine. Absolutely, is like, we have to keep them from getting the horn because they would be able to call the heroes to fight for them.
Right.
Right.
And she
and
says
then-
that straight out.
But it's someone later, one of the minor heroes, I think, says, no, we would just say no.
I thought it was Hawkwing.
Hawkwing.
Was
It was
it?
Hawkwing, I think.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, Since we both said Hawkwing at the same time, I'm gonna assume
I'm going
that...
with it.
Yeah.
Trivia roll counts.
I think what I'm thinking of is it was one of the minor heroes that says, because I was doing that episode, trying to do that episode recently too, that says if we were gravely injured, we would have to retreat to.
Oh yeah, it's
The
like his only
World
line
of
in the
Dreams.
entire series.
Or yeah, I can't remember which one.
It's the same conversation though.
Yeah, it was like the only thing that I could find about them.
Yeah, we're trying to put together all the Heroes of the Horn and get as much information together on them because we're doing the special episodes. What we've got the one power, we've got
Computer shot, so I'll see if I can get those notes. The ones I emailed you, we have.
Yeah, those were great.
But the other ones, we'll see.
Well, your hard drive is still good. I think it's just your monitor crapped out.
Yeah, but if I send it back and I'm like, give me a new motherfucking computer, you assholes, they might, but like, can I really expect them to?
Oh, bring it here. I'll back a hard drive up first.
Oh, yeah, I could do that. We'll figure it out. If I have to come here tomorrow, maybe for a little, I don't know if you're doing anything.
I mean, working.
I might do that just because I have off and I'm going to handle that tomorrow. Just sending it back and yelling at whoever I have to over the phone to make that happen.
Right.
Not literally. I'm not literally going to yell at a person over the phone.
Not judging.
But I just bought it. And that's bullshit.
You got it cheap for a reason. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's one of those rebuilds.
I have a few housekeeping things to do.
Cool.
I'm going to take care of that really quick because we have a few new patrons and I have a little bit of follow-up. Just a little bit.
Always awesome when we hear about new patrons.
And I'm trying to keep up with a little bit so that our lists don't get quite as long.
Okay.
So I'll start with Michael Wentz.
We appreciate you, Michael Wentz.
Yeah, sure. Jonathan Clydesdale.
Thank you, Clydesdale.
Thank you. Charles Green.
Thanks, Charlie.
Karen K. Lindboe. Lindboe.
Couldn't do without you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Seriously.
And Travis Baker.
Thank you, Travis.
So just a short list this week, but I want to say thank you to everybody. I got to say that's been one of the things that's been a challenge is that knowing which patron because we get the name on Patreon,
and then
then they get to pick their own username on Discord and
various usernames over different platforms.
Right. It's very hard to keep track of who's who. I would like some sort of application that like aggregated all the various social media messages I get and put them in one place.
There really aren't many good ones. I spent time looking for one, and also one where I could like be on my laptop and receive messages from my phone and say Facebook, Instagram, whatever platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Those things used to exist when the internet was simpler, smaller place, but they don't anymore. There's stuff out there, but none of it's very good, and none of it's all inclusive.
Careful, you're sounding like an old man.
When the internet was a simpler, smaller place where everybody got along. It was never.
I think it immediately became the internet, the dark place.
Yeah. Oh, there was definitely the dark place. I will say though that the corporations didn't always have free reign in the way they do now. All right, are we done bullshitting?
I think we're done bullshitting.
Okay. Shall we talk about this chapter?
We're never really done.
No,
I
mean that's all we do.
I'm not done.
Oh, I missed a Patreon. Matt Newcomb.
Thank you, Matt Newcomb.
He pledged in November. I was just looking at the end of October.
Oh.
Yeah.
We appreciate all you guys.
Yeah. Again, it's been the growth has been steady and continuous and absolutely insane. And I'm just constantly thankful. You know, when I have a bad day at work, I just like go read all the messages that everyone has sent me. They've been super positive and super nice about it.
And it really does keep the podcast going, even, you know, it's not like we're making a ton of money or anything, but just knowing that people care enough to donate to help us out and keep it going, it's motivating.
Totally. And I think this month I'm talking about maybe putting some of the money back into advertising. See if we can get a few more people. We haven't, we've put $10 a here and there into, Facebook ads or stuff like that. But
Played around with it, but it doesn't seem very effective.
I'm thinking about buying an Overcast ad. For those of you who use Overcast and are fans of ATP, he produces a pretty decent application that I use for listening to podcasts, and he lets you buy an ad directly through it.
Is Overcast just a typical podcast app?
Yeah, it's iPhone only though, so don't even try.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but it's just one of those things that trying to actually get to people who listen to podcasts is always difficult. So I've thought about investing some money in that. Just trying to let you guys know where your money's going. It's mostly gone to equipment at this point. A little bit of hosting fees, some hardware in terms of like hard drives and stuff like that. And now I'm considering putting it into advertising.
Yeah.
Some of it's gone into beer. I'm not going to disagree. I'm not going to say that hasn't happened. Okay. And one piece of follow-up. I read a fairly long email from one of our listeners, and I said if he told me who he was, I'd give him credit because I didn't write down his name. Well, he sent me a message. It's Lamgwin, actually, which is kind of an awesome username. That's his username on Reddit, which is Lamgwin from Camelin. Awesome. And he wanted to stress that as neat as it would be, he doesn't believe his own theory.
Okay.
Which I just sort of wanted to bring up that, like, a lot of times we throw theories out there and we don't necessarily agree with everything we say. We say it might be possible for this to happen. It might be possible for that to happen. And we do occasionally get people who are maybe take our speculation a little too seriously.
Like way too serious.
It's not canon.
No, we're just speculating. And where we can, we support it with evidence. But if you disagree with us, that's totally fine. We disagree with ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
What was Lamquin's theory? The user, not
the
character.
That was about the White Cloaks and why they needed to get back to Camelin. And he sort of said that perhaps Loghain was going to be...
Oh, right. We talked about this last time.
Pedron Niles.
He was wanting to have like a false dragon and unite.
Exactly. Exactly.
Gotcha.
And that
doesn't Niall call it a lion to unite the villagers?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think he refers to it as a lion.
And that there's some possibility that he was just going to use Loghain in that position.
I mean, it makes perfect sense.
It makes sense. I don't see a lot of evidence pro or against it. Other than when I think back to that scene where he talks about the lion, he seems to be coming up with it for the first time. It doesn't seem to be a pre-existing idea. So that's where I like the theory. I don't necessarily think it holds water.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed the email, and it was well written, so I read it out loud.
Yeah, and like with a lot of our theories, like there's no way to prove or disprove. It's when we start speculating, like, why is this the way that it is, that we have to...
Exactly. And, this isn't the real world. We're not... This didn't actually happen. It's totally... The great thing about headcanon in fictional universes is it can be as true to you as something else may have been to the author.
Yeah.
But it's in your head, I think Sanderson has great quotes about this, about how a piece of artwork really becomes alive when you read it, not when it's written.
Didn't he say directly at one point that he's sure that Robert Jordan left certain things ambiguous so that you would have to think about it?
I'm sure.
Yeah. I think he's even said he's very involved, like, with fans, and he'll occasionally pop up on Wheel of Time or Stormlight specific subreddits, but he said that he doesn't like to participate in the conversations too much because if he says something, it kind of becomes canon, and then it stops the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I read some quotes from him too where it even sounded like he was speculating and trying to make that clear, and people still consider it canon. Like he doesn't have all the answers.
Right.
And the notes don't have all the answers because in many cases Jordan went directly against what he wrote down in the notes.
Yeah, or possibly left certain things purposely ambiguous.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate Jordan and Sanderson as the authors of the series. I know I don't I don't pay attention to the companion. because I in my head say it's not canon.
Yeah. Well,
There's
yeah.
definitely some errors in the companion.
Right.
It looks that way to me. Although I use it in my research sometimes.
It's a resource, but
Yeah.
it's one that you really have to double check.
Yeah, it's helpful.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think the Wheel of Time FAQ has more accurate information in it.
Yeah.
And frequently I do check it against the Wheel of Time
The
FAQ.
rigors of nerds who care a lot on the internet, just going over it and over it, just by default makes it
Yeah, who would spend
More
that
accurate
much
than-
time on this series? What nerds?
All our
Totally
all the
waste.
listeners participating right now.
It's
And-
just
yeah.
the amount of effort that probably went into like the Wheel of Time FAQ is way more, just vastly more than however many people they had work on the companion.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I think those originally sprang out from like old school forums, and then
Yeah.
were distilled down into like a wiki. Except it wasn't a wiki back then.
Right.
Shout out to the Wheel of Time FAQ. It's been one of my most visited web pages since like 1997, which is now hosted on Dragonmount.
Wheel of Time FAQ.
Yeah.
There's 2 or 3 that are really good.
Have y'all seen the 13th Depository?
Yeah.
Except the
It's a website, but I think it has like a lot of theories, analysis, character profiles. I haven't spent too much time on it, but I've definitely gotten lost in some articles.
That's one I check sometimes.
is it Wheel of Time specific?
Yeah.
Yes. It's named after that secret library in the White Tower.
Right. Oh, you know, I've definitely Googled to this page a whole bunch. Like, ended up on articles.
There's a lot of good information there for sure.
That's all right. I'm leaving that up as a tab so I can go look at it later. I'm done with my follow up.
Cool.
I do have to do one more shout out. Jon Horrill, one of our fans, one of our patrons, offered to help me with the editing.
Oh man, yeah.
And he's based in
Nice.
London. So after our last recording session, I sent him the file. He had it back to me by the time I woke up the next morning. And
Nice.
oh man, it saved me so much time and effort. He is a saint and he's offered to continue to help us out. So I'm going to keep shouting his name out. But yeah, Jon Horrill has been just amazing.
I am Groot.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?